Destroyer of worlds.
And yet,
The most obvious issue with Kingdom Come Deliverance II, just like in the first game, is the save system. Or rather, it's not exactly a problem, but the save system doesn't work the way it was intended to and fails to fulfill the functions it was supposed to. You can't save at any time. Saves happen automatically at key, mostly story-related moments when you go to sleep and when you use an alchemical potion called Savior Schnapps. The autosaves are placed along the story progression in a less than ideal way, and saving by sleeping is only possible in your own bed or in a rented room at a tavern, which often means pain. As for Savior Schnapps, they're only available in decent quantities if you have been grinding alchemy from the start of the game, and even then, brewing them is dull and monotonous. Alternatively, you can level up your theft skills and just steal them. The main problem here is that good game design, in my opinion, should not rob the player of the fundamental and classic ability to save without punishment or grinding. On PC, the most downloaded mod for Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 is the convenient save mod. Consoles, however, don't have mods. Instead, there is a janky workaround, the save and exit to main menu option in the pause menu. It's one thing if the game didn't require frequent saves, but it does. There are lots of difficult mandatory story stealth missions where you might want to use 20 to 30 saves just to get through one location. And even that's not all. You see, KCD II is essentially split into two parts. The first half of the game takes place on a large map, and the second half on an enormous, colossal and gorgeous map that's tough to load even on high-end hardware. Even on the PS5 Pro or the best SSDs available for PC, the second part of the game loads significantly longer if you're not using the Savior Schnapps save, but instead saving and exiting to the main menu. Toward the end of the game, during the largest battles, the game can take several minutes to load, and sometimes it even freezes during loading. So, at the start of the game, you're frustrated by the scarcity of schnapps, and in the second half, even the workaround option becomes barely usable, making the end game almost unbearable. In a game this complex and reliant on saves, PC players are given a cheat, a mod that breaks the entire saving system, which makes you wonder why is it even designed this way in the first place, while console players are stuck with an awkward, annoying workaround that requires long load times and extra button presses. Wouldn't it have been simpler to create two difficult modes for KCD II, as many modern action RPGs do? A realistic mode and a more arcade-friendly mode, at least with convenient saves. Ideally, also with features players have been asking for, like more money for traders. Audentes fortuna ivat, ladies and gentlemen. Or...
Dentes fortuna kurwa jebać.
If you haven't played Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 yet, you have almost certainly watched at least one detailed review mostly praising the game. So today I decided not to repeat my fellow creators, but to dive into some sharp criticism of the sequel. I have spent over 100 hours in this game, and you know what I realized? First, to critique this perfectly, you'd need at least 200 hours, and that's without counting the future DLCs. But YouTube will not let me drop videos just twice a year after putting in that much work. Second, KCD II is genuinely hard to criticize because it really is objectively a masterpiece. For example, just look at the brilliant Czech voice acting. First and foremost, KCD II is a game by Czechs about Czechs. The medieval setting of Bohemia historically lies in what is now the Czech Republic, and the game was made by the legendary Daniel Vavra, who left 2K Czech. So you absolutely must play with Czech voiceover. No excuses like I don't understand Czech. Especially if you know 2 or 3 languages like English and Ukrainian, you already understand a lot of Czech. There is diegetic Czech in books, notes, and even on random objects. The game contains more text than any action RPG, with beautifully stylized fonts displaying chapter titles and location descriptions. Subtitles often appear above character heads, so you can look directly at the person you're talking to. And especially near the end of the game, there are so many Germans, Poles, Cumans, Italians, French and Roma characters. all speak in their own languages or mixes on any game localization. Sometimes you'll have to guess what they're saying based on context. In some cases, you literally have to learn other languages inside the game. I'm not kidding, that's actually a quest. This is an ultra multicultural game and it deserves to be played with authentic Czech audio. We could spend hours covering the game's strength before diving into critique. There are that many. In fact, the moment I wanted to criticize the lack of character customization compared to other action RPGs, the devs released a free update with Barber. Now Indra can visit your favorite medieval barbershop. But here is where my nitpicking begins. Even with that update, customization is still pretty shallow, and for some reason you can haggle with the barber, even though you can negotiate with nearly every other service provider in the game. Aside from the obvious oversight with the save system, KCD II has problems with player orientation. Even though the game aims to be hyper-realistic, sometimes it's just not intuitive, even within its own logic. More than once, the game had me searching for a needle in a haystack with little to no hints. I don't find that kind of gameplay engaging. For instance, there was one quest where I needed a key and either the trigger didn't work or the hint just didn't exist. Wandering around the area trying to brute force your way through the solution only leads to frustration. Realism in games is great. Deep realism, fascinating for enthusiasts, but excessive realism at the cost of players' comfort, that, in my opinion, is something you can cut without stretching the game to 200 hours. Even 100 is more than enough. Better to figure out how to implement New Game Plus in this realistic gameplay. And that brings us to the next problem. The game doesn't have a New Game Plus mode, and no one seems to have a clear answer as to whether it even needs one, let alone whether such feature is even possible in a game this realistic. New Game Plus usually means replaying with your old gear, but in KCD II, your power level is so tightly tied to your inventory that restarting with everything intact would make the game boring. You'd just slice through everyone with ease. And if the devs tried to fix that by simply giving enemies more hit points, it would feel more like an arcade game. And KCD is very much not that. So yeah, it makes sense for there to be no New Game Plus, but it's still a bit disappointing, especially when you want to try different dialogues, choices or major decisions that genuinely affect almost everything. Starting from scratch just doesn't hit the same as New Game Plus, let's be honest. In many modern games, New Game Plus is full of extra skills or new cutscenes. It keeps things interesting. If Kingdom Come were a super linear game, it wouldn't be a big deal, but it's not. It's very replayable. So maybe it's once again a story about creating two game modes for KCD II like Ubisoft did in Assassin's Creed Shadows. New Game Plus would be easy to implement in an arcade-style mode. Speaking of missed potential, a lot of side quests in KCD II can't be completed after finishing the main story. Villages where you need to talk to an NPC for a side quest might be burned down by the time you get there post-ending. That happened to me. I spent an hour chasing after some damn rock only to find out I couldn't finish the final part of the quest because the required NPC no longer existed, and the reward? A talisman with such a vague description that even Google didn't help. Turns out it's one of those fetch quests with a weak payoff, not ideal after the grand finale. So in this game you must do every side quest before the main ones. You have to artificially delay the ending and take detours just to complete side content. I think that's a bit too realistic even for KCD. Why design 200 hours of content if a player can easily miss a chunk of it, then not want to replay the whole game without New Game Plus? It means people will not get to see all the story branches or missed content. To be fair, there are side quests that change interestingly after you finish the main story, and that does balance things out a bit. But it also adds chaos and confusion to the quest log. And speaking of chaos, players who don't enjoy reading, listening and extracting bits of important info from walls of text will find KCD II exhausting. Dialogue can go on so long, you could watch a short film in the time it takes to talk to just one new NPC. Conversations are as realistic as everything else in the game, so if you thought Mass Effect was a dialogue simulator in space, prepare to cry when you meet Indra. And that's just the start. The second half of the game introduces even more annoying characters who mock you, give you dumb tasks, and pile on other frustrations I didn't even want to get into. Oh, and romance in the game. It's weird. There is an unclear hidden system that determines whether or not you'll see a romance scene. And you can easily miss it just by talking to your crew in the wrong order. Will a specific quest where you help your love interest guarantee a romance? Sometimes no. Yeah, Rosa Rutherford from Gutenberg. You can risk important saves for some miserable book and the result might not even get you a romance. Meanwhile, the gay romance is the easiest one to get. I have no problem with that personally, but come on, it stings a bit. Sometimes the game doesn't let you enjoy playing. That sounds dumb, but it's true. If you've played a lot of open-world action RPGs, you know the drill. Tons of freedom, access to your full inventory, and the ability to do anything anytime.
I am so hungry. Even that dog turd looks tempting.
That freedom disappears when the game forces you to play as a less exciting side character in narrow corridor levels with boring dialogues. It's okay the first time when it's a cool plot twist and you're curious to see what's next. But when it happens again and again, it gets boring fast. Why should I play as some mediocre side character when I've already built an empire with the main one? You know why it worked in Cyberpunk 2077 with Silverhand? Because they gave you a character just as cool, if not cooler than V, with unique gameplay and plot mechanics, and he was part of pivotal story moments. In KCD II, it's just an alcoholic priest. Sometimes he'll chat about shady alliances that barely matter, or play dice without access to Indra's broken loaded dice. That's stealing from the player, taking away things they have earned. It would have been fine if it happened once at a key moment, but the game does it multiple times. It feels like padding. Speaking of padding, the perk system needs a rework. There are about 270 perk points in the game and most of them can go toward unique, often active abilities. Each one is wildly different. Faster crossbow reloading, revealing all map points, commanding your dog to hunt, drunkenness perks that actually work in gameplay, not just on paper. Sounds amazing, right? In theory, yes, but in practice, not so much. The marketing for the game promised full freedom in creating your own build, but in reality, only a couple dozen perks are vastly better than the rest. The optimal way to play it is to prioritize the same 20 perks every time. Once you've got those, the game becomes way easier. You don't need to explore because the map's already revealed. You don't need to worry about laws. Your charisma will get you out of anything. There is no real point in building and playing a stealth master or a smooth talking genius. Just cherry pick the top perks from each skill tree and you're one-man army. So I think the perk system needs a rebalance. Maybe just stagger the unlocks better, or better yet, remove the useless ones and improve the popular ones based on player data. That would make a game much more replayable. Right now you could spend 100 hours leveling up and still have 70 perks you never touched, and probably never will. But here is what I'm sure you will want to do. Hit that subscribe button, ring the bell, drop a like and leave a comment to help me keep making more videos. One more thing that could help with replayability, fixing a ton of small bugs. For example, potion debuffs only apply after you close your inventory, which can cancel out buffs you already had. Say you drink a stomach potion that reduces your hunger by 20, you think it's safe to eat, but it only takes effect after closing your inventory and waiting a few seconds, so you accidentally overeat. That removes buffs tied to fasting or sleep deprivation and you lose out on progress just like that. Other small issues include audio bugs. Around 60% into my playthrough, voices started glitching during dialogue and rain sounds began cutting out. This might be related on the game's Stalker style, a lifestyle system where a lot depends on your CPU, not your GPU, or it could just be save corruption. As I said, the second half of the game loads much slower, even on top tier rigs. And by the way, in the second half of the game, especially near the largest settlement, Gutenberg, and inside it, there are serious FPS drops even on a PS5 Pro or top-tier GPUs. These performance issues are buried so deep in the game that many players never even reach them. It's not game-breaking, but definitely annoying. Finally, it baffles me that even in the sequel your character still struggles to jump or climb stairs without jittering or getting stuck. It breaks immersion and reminds you you're playing a game, not living in a medieval world. So let's hope this channel doesn't get stuck like that. To make sure it doesn't, all I ask is that you press every damn button around this video and leave your thoughts in the comments. Also, the link to my Patreon might already be live when you're watching this, or you just need to wait a few more videos. Supporting me there will definitely motivate me to make more content more often. And for higher tiers of support, you can unlock some extra perks.
Na hradbách vzpomene dodat Audentes fortuna, kurva jebat. Víno a ženy a žejdlík piva, s armádou přijíždí kovář Jindra s Rackem a Hanušem vědou do pražských vojáků. Nakonec společně vše dají do